Korean fried chicken.
Brother, that always plays.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they really found a way to connect with a certain population group.
Yeah, they got a little inspiration and ran with it. But speaking of special, how about high knees last night?
Wow, East Coast bias.
I mean, look, the Rut needed a ranked win. Sometimes, let's just say the mob isn't dead. Maybe there was perhaps some underhanded play in this game. I don't know. But
Usually, it's a whistle in Piscataway that Rutgers is prone to get at the rack. I guess now it's Jersey Mike's Arena.
yes, the
It'll always be the
JMA.
rack. It'll always be the rack. I think
Yeah.
I think we know that. But yeah, high knees ref Jeffrey Anderson. By the way, welcome to Mostly Major Show. He's Darren Wallace. I'm Keenan Dixon. We're talking Rutgers getting a win over Illinois at the crib. Big Ten basketball. Nobody can win on the road. It's just how it's going this year. Um, but it helps when you have a referee, Jeffrey Anderson, running down the court and essentially ushering Ace Bailey in to have a shot. And it was early in the game, but it was a close enough game down the stretch where it could have made a difference. So
I mean, look,
East Coast bias exists in a conference that spreads from coast to coast. All right. That's just
I I just think that um Jeffrey was just trying to do his job. Sometimes you get caught up. He's very detail oriented, even down to the way he runs in a game.
true.
And I think, it was an unfortunate situation he found himself in. What do they say in the NBA? Incidental contact. It was incidental contact.
It was really hands up. My bad.
If anything, it was textbook moving defense.
Yeah, I guess. But he was also pushing the defender back. But good on Rutgers. They got a win. They needed that win desperately because right now, um, they were on the bubble of the CBI. I think this sort of solidifies their entry into the college basketball invitational, which is obviously the third highest postseason tournament.
Hey, look, they're not dead yet. They gotta. I
No,
know it's not an ideal path, but I think if they can somehow manage to get hot at the end of conference play, win a few conference games, I'm not guaranteeing it because they have played poorly. Up to this point, they played, barely
they
above 500
they,
basketball,
they
but
lost they lost to Kennesaw State.
right. But I mean, but they also beat Illinois. So, I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think listen,
A
I'm not,
quad
I'm
four, a quad four road loss looks so awful.
right. But it's not about how you start. It's about how you finish, right?
That's true.
Don't tell
That's
that to Syracuse
inspirational. Did
basketball,
you
but
did you come up with that?
Wilt Chamberlain told me that
Probably.
after his 100-point game.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that 100-point game as we always do, but we have some new information. We appreciate the listeners contributing, and some new video actually just dropped. So we'll talk about that after we talk with University of Denver women's basketball head coach Doshia Woods. Thanks for taking some time, Coach. How's everything been?
It's been as simple as that. It has been. No, I'm doing well. It is. Obviously some tough losses, but I'm good. How have
Well,
you guys been?
we
Before y'all get into all the meat and potatoes, everything, y'all good?
um,
It's going.
we're one foot in front of
It's
the other.
been.
We actually, yeah, we actually were just in the same vicinity.
Yeah.
Not last week, but the week prior. Or was it? Yeah, the week prior. We went. Keenan's obviously in Denver, and he's got some ties to a home in Breckenridge,
Okay,
and our group of friends from grad school, we reunited for the first time in a while at that home.
oh,
So that was
nice.
nice to
Yeah.
spend a weekend and a day with the homies, so that was cool.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I'm back in Jersey, so I've been back in Jersey. But one foot in front of the other.
That's all you
Grateful
can
to
do.
wake up every day.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Right.
And sometimes it's just like one moment at a time, not even one day at a time. It's like this. Let me see this moment to moment.
that's true.
hmm you have a pretty big weekend for yourself outside of basketball. I hear there's a pretty big game on Sunday. Not sure if you were aware, but I know it might be a little important to you. Any comment on that?
Always. I've said this before the season started. The Chiefs win three in a row. Though I live in Denver, prepare to be sick of me. Like 100% prepared to be sick of me. But no, I'm excited. Being a football fan and Chiefs fan, I watch a lot of basketball, and football has always been like the one sport I don't necessarily know anything about. So I just give myself a chance to just be a fan. And everybody goes through their ups and downs, all of those things. But it's our time now, and I am just like I said, prepared to be sick of me. Win or lose, I'm gonna be in my Chiefs gear. But it's been fun to be hated. Our bandwagon's open either for haters or supporters. Either way it goes, the bandwagon's open.
Was it last season that you went to your first game or that at Arrowhead that I
Yes,
saw? I'm not
it
sure.
was. It's
Yes.
Taylor Swift's first game too. And we actually got a selfie. We were like,
Yeah, you did. I saw that on
yeah,
Twitter.
we were
Yes.
like three sections over, and I was like, "What's all the commotion?" Where I finally said, because one of my friends actually runs the stadium at Arrowhead. He's
Oh
in
wow.
charge of like the whole thing. So he got his tickets, and then I realized all this commotion later on because they're playing the Bears, and so that was a blowout in like the second quarter. So I go over there, and the people who had seats right in front, they just kept letting everybody come in. So turn my phone around, snap my little selfie. And so we're in the same frame together. Obviously, I didn't like talk to her, but yeah, that was my first game at Arrowhead. I need to get
Okay.
back.
Okay. Yeah. See, I knew I remembered that right. I was like, I'm pretty sure it was your first game.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'm going to
Um,
say about it is to work at Tulane for 10 years in New Orleans and then have the Super Bowl be in New Orleans this weekend and the Chiefs get assigned Tulane for practice.
well,
I mean, that's tough.
Thank
I
you.
mean,
Yeah,
it's it.
So
yeah.
nobody needs to send me no pictures, no videos. I
Like
really don't want
all these Super Bowls that they're at now, and you're in Denver, so.
Yeah.
But
But at
yeah, I'll
least you
be
get to
looking
see them
forward to it.
once a year, when they come to town. So
That's
that
true. I
that
did go to
helps.
the game when they played here, and
Yeah,
I told Broncos fans, don't act like the Chiefs fans never did anything for you. Welcome to the playoffs.
right. Just to get bounced a week later. So
Yeah.
they didn't really stand a chance. I thought what was fascinating about that game was just seeing Broncos fans and how they were like, "Oh my gosh, we're the greatest team ever," and they were playing against, Carson
The
Wentz.
backups. Yeah,
No
the
disrespect to
backups.
Carson Wentz, he had a great couple of seasons there in Philly, but he's not.
Yes.
He's not the same.
Being at the game, that's what I was just like, y'all, this can't be real life right now. Like just how they were acting. Okay. I don't,
Something about football just brings out the delusion in everybody, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah. All right. So basketball. I mean, it's the season. You said it's going right, and
Mhm.
um, I think that's kind of the ups and downs that all of the coaches feel across the Summit League, and I think we see that across a ton of mid-major conferences where there's a ton of parity and anything can happen. I mean, we saw you guys go on a run last year at, I guess, this point in the season where you started rattling off some wins. Are you feeling like you're starting to turn a little corner, where you're starting to see some of that development in the roster and getting back to that point where you can go and compete again?
Absolutely. I think, what's hard, especially in what we do is all people see is the outcome, right? You see the final score and you're like, oh, they lost again, they lost again. You don't realize we led the game for 39 plus minutes at Oral Roberts on the road. You don't realize that a kid who didn't play last season at all came back from ACL and had our first double double. Like you don't see some of these kind of small wins that show up. So I think I hate it in terms of like the outcome, if you will. But we really are doing a lot of good things. We're just not doing them consistently for 40 minutes, as we experienced last night. But there's a lot for us to still try to draw some confidence from to have 2,000-point scorers as juniors in both Jordan Jones and Emma Smith. Obviously, trying to find some consistency around there. So, I always operate with this notion that we're going to be able to turn the corner. And, that's what's hard sometimes too. You overanalyze every little possession when it's 1 to 2, 3 possessions that you're losing. No one really wants to get mollywop, but at least if you got mollywop, you didn't have a chance anyway, right? It's
Right.
30 points and it didn't matter. And we tried something different this morning at practice, but I'm always going to show up and operate in the sense of like this is going to be the time that we'll get a break of our own, be able to kind of catch some of those breaks. But I know this every time we step on the floor, if I were scouting us, I'd hate to scout us because you feel like in one sense it might be a pad game because of our record. It can come pad your stats, and then next thing you know, you're sitting there trying to fight tooth and nail possession. It can go either way. So I'd like to always give us a chance, and I feel like that's what our players are been able to do.
I think that's really the fascinating thing about college basketball because the season is so long. Over the course of so many months where so much happens, and I think that you start to see the teams really gel together, really this time of year in February. And I mean, you mentioned something. You were like, you don't see all the progress, all the work that's going in behind the scenes. You just see the results when you're on the periphery. And Tommy Bruner, I mean, you saw it up close and personal last year with Denver men's hoops, but he told me after the semifinal last season when Denver made it to their first ever championship game, and he was like, people saw the struggle. They saw the 6 games straight that were lost coming into the tournament. They didn't see all of those practices and early mornings and late nights where you're watching tape and you're really trying to fight to figure out what's going to work because there's no draft in college hoops, right? You got to go out and win, right? You're not tanking for the next season or anything. Is that like, are you seeing that with your team where it's just, hey, let's go out? I mean, we have another day. Let's go play.
Yeah, when you look at the makeup of our team, people that we have some experience back in, Jones, Smith, and Robles. We're playing. We got 4 true freshmen, if you will, on our roster, and 3 of them play, and all 3 of them have started at different points too. So they're also in different roles. So, you see that. I don't want to necessarily say. I think for us, how we practice and how we try to show up is like we still have a chance. And I think our scores are indicative of that too, right? We're not showing up like, oh, playing to our record in a sense. Oh, we're got one conference win, and we started out 0-6 starting conference. That this is what we're capable of. No, we know what we're capable of. Trying to do that consistently for 40 minutes. You're right. The season gets a bit long. I think for me as a coach, thinking about how does the spring and summer look, or some of the decisions I'm making, then that kind of play into as it's getting longer. I'll probably do some things differently. You start to kind of have some different ideas that way, but I don't think we can go in operating as if 1-0. And my guy Tang at K-State, that's often what we talk about when we text. Let's just go 1-0, 1-0, 1-0 today. And the team would tell you we try to have that mantra and that mindset, so you don't get too high or too low. What I love about basketball is like we started this by talking about football. You play on Sundays or you play on Saturdays in college when you got all week to sit there and dwell or celebrate or whatever. Basketball, I mean, we lost yesterday. We were up this morning at 9 a.m. watching film, preparing for the 11 a.m. game on Saturday. There's no time to celebrate or sulk, and I kind of like the process of that. But in doing so, it challenges your mindset too.
I think one of the unique things about particularly the league you're in, but also college basketball is, when you're in one of those conferences where you get pretty much every team is going to get a chance to make the conference tournament, you know, it really is more about how you finish. You can start however you want, but if you're coming into the conference tournament feeling good about how you're playing, you can be a completely different team than you were the previous 1 or 2 times you played, a conference opponent. And I often think of last season, Omaha, they had to come back in that first round game against Kansas City, I believe. They were down, they had to come back, they win that game, and then they take South Dakota State, to the break. They don't win that game, but if you were to look at, the 2 times prior that they played, you would think, Omaha has no chance. But then you watch that third game, and Omaha led for a good portion of that
Mhm.
game, and it wasn't until the final, 4 or 5 minutes that South Dakota State really even got themselves in control, and they never pulled away. It was, I mean, I think they only won by 7 or 8 points. So, do you, as a coach of, you're the coach of Denver, do you have those moments of, games in the past or teams in the past? I think of, also Kansas City from a couple of years ago, the run that they went on in the tournament. Do
You
you
just had
draw
to bring
back
that
on
one
those
up,
moments? Okay, I know,
right?
I
It's all
know.
good, but it's
That's
also
me,
but it's
man.
See,
also why we
I wasn't even going there.
nah.
I was just thinking of,
But it's
I was
also
just
why we
thinking
love
of,
March Madness
That
though
is
too,
March,
right?
yeah.
right,
That is
right.
like the epitome, the run that they went on. That's the epitome of March and why we all love it. College basketball and like the whole setup. And I think to your point, being at mid-major, South Dakota State hadn't lost a game in God knows how long, right? In the regular season. And I think they're at 50 plus now, close to 60. All that could be irrelevant in March, right? In a sense of like, we just need to beat you one night. And we talk about March and June with our team because of the type of conference that we're in. We're not one of these Power Four conferences where half are going to get an at-large bid. So I think in speaking that way to our team, we always kind of go in thinking that we have a chance, thinking that, at some point it may not be the regular season championship, but we can put ourselves in a situation to be able to cut down on that. I think for us here at DU, we talk about the reality of it as well. I'm the third coach since we've been in the Summer League for women's basketball. Um, and to start the season this year, we talked about DU women's basketball hadn't won a conference tournament game since our first year in the league, 2013, 2014. So 3 coaches later, and we're essentially in the same, and that's probably why that shot from UMKC stung so much, right? To lose on a buzzer shot that way. But it's something that we're fully aware of, but it's something that we also embrace because we want to be that group, right? We want to be that group to kind of turn it around. And March gives us a chance to do that. I love the fact, especially considering where we are right now in conference, that they changed the rule that everybody gets to go. It's like those first couple of years, it's like you're sitting there doing the math and this happens, that happened between COVID. So I'm glad that I got a degree in English. There's one less thing for me to have to worry about in terms of numbers, but I like that we all get that opportunity.
And like I was kind of alluding to, I think one thing that you have is you have those players who now, Emma's been there twice. And Jordan was really, she was emerging last year. Angie, obviously, I know that, you have that special bond with her, and those three do have that experience, of being there before. Do you feel, how much do you lean on them as the season wanes on to kind of be that positivity in the locker room, be the positivity on the court, and kind of remind the team that, hey, our record might be what it is right now, but there is a bigger picture, and it all gets thrown out once we land in Sioux Falls.
It's something that we talk about. Those three are also in our leadership team. So, we try to have a leadership brunch like once a month or every couple weeks to kind of just get on the same page and what they're feeling, what they need from me. So those are three that I've leaned on a lot, especially this year with the experience that they're able to bring. And I think that's what makes sometimes some of these losses a little bit more frustrating is because we have really developed a much better rapport of understanding from the coach's side, from the player side, and them really being the voice. And so a lot of things that kind of plagued us in the past, we've been able to clean up this season, but obviously to only end up at the same spot. So that it is those three I lean on a lot, but I think they've also put in a lot of work to be in a position to be leaned on, if that makes sense. Like they want the ball in their hands, they want to be on the floor, they want to be able to make the plays. Don't always get it right, but they want to be in those positions. And a lot of that is to the work that they put in the off season and that they continue to put in. So I do lean on them heavily, for a lot of different things, not just on the court, but in the locker room as well.
As an outside observer and a lover of college hoops, I pay attention to all these leagues, but I was telling Darren the other day, like it really seems like once March hits, that is the most important month. I know March or not March, February. Once February hits, I know March Madness is March Madness, and you got to win there. But once you hit March, it's basically one and done, and that's it. If you have a bad day, you have a bad day, and your season's over. But I think February gets you to those points where you can set yourself up for a good matchup in the Summit League tournament in Sioux Falls, or whatever it may be. Maybe you get to avoid the South Dakota State crowd on day two or whatever it is, right? Like those are things that I'm always observing, but I'm curious from your perspective, how important is it once that calendar flips to February, when you're looking at the last 8, 9, 10 games of the season, of the regular season, and kind of setting yourself up for conference play?
We talk about wanting to play our best basketball late February, right? Late February, going into March, and been able to apply a lot of these different lessons that we've learned, whether they're through wins or losses throughout the season. So it is something, again, that the type of conference that we're in to start, and as a coach, and us collectively as a staff, is trying to, keep the confidence up, reminding them of things that we are doing well. So we don't lose sight of that just because, again, a game like the Oral Roberts game, to lead for 39 plus minutes, and not all was lost. Yeah, the game was lost, but look what we got out of that game. Our big got a little bit more confidence. We got a couple other people hitting shots. We defended, we rebounded. So all of those things, and you try to you try to put the puzzle together that way. And it's especially when you're obviously not winning, but also I feel like for us to kind of learn through some of these moments, because when you're winning, then you feel like, oh, everything's going great. Just because you're winning doesn't mean things are going great either, right? And some people could be peaking right now. And the beauty of March is I don't have to beat you twice. I just need to beat you once. I don't have to be, you could be the best team, but not tonight. And
Yeah.
it is something that we, talk about, and we try to live, and we try to get them to understand that. So it is very much part of the dialogue. And, when we get to the next chapter of our season, it's everybody's 0-0. Obviously, people got different types of confidence, but we really try to lean on the things that we're doing well. And if we got to piece it together so they can feel like it was a win, then that's exactly what we're going to do.
Coach, one of the big talking points surrounding basketball in general lately, specifically the NBA, is a big emphasis on, oh, they shoot too many threes. And it made me think of your team, because you, for the past few years, your team has been at the top of the league in three-pointers attempted, three-pointers made. And even looking at this season, you're right up there. You're third in the league in threes made and second in threes attempted. And it just got me thinking about, just what do coaches have to say? So I'm curious, just to kind of just talk about basketball in general, just your thoughts on the approach to basketball, because I still think that holistically, basketball is still mostly played the same way. It's just that we've eliminated a lot of, the 18 footers, the 20 footers, the foot on the line shots, and instead are just taking that extra step back and shooting a three-pointer. So just where do you gauge as far as how maybe college basketball or even professional basketball has evolved to where teams are shooting more threes? And do you think that is it too many, or do you think that that's just kind of the natural evolution of the game?
Oh, little question. But a great question. When I got this position, I said we are, and we still do have our hashtag Long Ball Elite. It's actually a fundraiser for us as well. You can pledge for every three that we make. So that is a big part of what we are. But like I told the team this morning during film, what's also different is all the analytics involved, in the sense of time, score, things like that. We had been shooting the three well, and I know that's our tag, is like, oh, they want to. If you listen to some earlier podcasts, I'd say 30 U shots, 33s. Well, all people here are the 33s. We're also trying to get to the U shot, but this season, let me back up. When last season ended, a couple of players were basically like, really want to be able to be a three-level scorer at a mid-range. So look, here's the moments where you can shoot it. It's not for everybody. It's still a low percentage shot. It's the lowest percentage shot. But here's how we can incorporate it. So you look at somebody like Jordan Jones. It's a big part of her game this year. Is a big part that she had, even coming out of high school. I had a chance to kind of work on that. When is the right shot, a right time to take that shot? So I feel like the analytics of the game, threes are going to always be worth more than twos, but in how those shots are happening, and it's to your point, why take a long two, just back up and get the extra point, especially in some cases if you're losing the games by a possession or two. But for us, we really try to have it more of a teaching point, in a sense of, this is what we want to be able to do. This is the right shot, passing up good shots for better shots. There wasn't a stretch, and even we're kind of in that stretch right now. Though we still are like second in attempts, is probably a few too many because we're not shooting the ball great. And I know sometimes people think, oh, you're just gonna live and die by the three. It's really not. It's more thought that goes into it. It's more a thought process that goes into it. We want the first kind of open look that we can get, and that's something that we've kind of struggled with this year. Is we're still getting a lot of the same looks. We're just not making them. If you pull up our synergy numbers, for as much as everybody knows how well we like to shoot the three, we still manage to get off a good, clean, probably 10 to 12 a game. And trying to figure out the right combination. So I say all that to say it is a big part. But I think basketball, when it comes to what makes it such a unique sport, is if we were track coaches, time is time. If you run the 100, you're trying to get to I mean, time is time. You can't finesse it, none of that. Basketball, there's so many different ways. You look just in this conference. We shoot a lot of threes. South Dakota shoots a lot of threes. We get them off differently. We have slightly different style. They're even on their third coach in the 5 years that I've been here, still kind of essentially doing the same thing, right? So there's a lot of different ways that people can kind of play. I think ultimately trying to get your team to understand what's the best shot for them. And not only the best shot for them, but also the best shot at that moment, whether it's late in the season, early in the season, late in the shot clock. So it is a big part of what we do, but I don't want people to feel like that's all we do and we're defined by it because we can execute some sets. And again, Joe's, I think, second in the conference in scoring, and she's not a prolific three-point shooter. So there's our ways that we can still isolate and get people the touches they need to get.
I think that's interesting because the ebbs and flows of sport, you get the evolution, right? At times, and I think everyone thinks about Big 12 football, right? Where it's just air raid, let's throw the ball 70% of the time. And then you look at Big 10 football, it's like smash mouth. But then I mean, we went through eras where the big man was so dominant in basketball. And now we're in that point, and I think everyone points to the NBA when you start to think about it because so many three-pointers are shot there. Well, these guys are so elite at three-point shooting. And I mean, we've seen,
Elevate.
yeah, yeah, and we've seen the zone defense almost nullified entirely in college basketball. And I've talked to some coaches about this, where they used to live with the zone defense, but now with the extended three-point line, the court is spread out, and
Mhm.
you can't really play a zone because it's easier to penetrate now. Are you seeing that? And is there a way to kind of exploit that? I'm sure if there was, right, and if you knew it, you would be using it right now. But I mean, is that a thing where you start to see those ebbs and flows, and then maybe with the extended three-point line, all of a sudden defense can't do what they used to do, so offense maybe has the advantage?
Absolutely. And you think, especially in women's basketball, obviously we're not as tall and athletic as the guys. And to be able to cover that much ground, essentially the same type of ground, when we had a much closer three-point line, things made a little bit more sense. Now your pulls are longer, rotations are a lot longer. So that means, what type of team do you have to play the defense that you want to have? We are a floppy style where we'll go a little man zone, or we might do that within the same possession to kind of mix it up. But it definitely, you've had to tweak it a little bit because you can't cover as much ground. The other part, though, just in terms of overall, you talk about like the differences in like the style of play and goes through these ebbs and flows. A big part of that too is also where you are and the type of players you can get. When I got this position here, a lot of Coach Dubs, who's my associate head coach, she worked and played for Carl Semesco, who was a longtime coach at Florida Gulf Coast. So that's where a lot of our, layups and threes concept came from initially because we can't get the bigs. We can't get the bigs. I mean, if those bigger schools would stop hoarding them all as they're just sitting there, but most of the time you'll see them in major conferences. I know Brooklyn Myers having a phenomenal year again, but most of the time they're guard heavy because the bigs are somewhere else. So now you have to figure out, well, what's going to give me the best chance to try to win or try to compete. A lot of us don't have the luxury of having multiple. You might have one or two, but I'm thinking, South Carolina off the top of my head. I mean, she's got three that don't even play.
Yeah.
Like three that I'm sure will develop and like sees a place for them. But just think if they could be somewhere else to kind of help us. So a lot of that is how you
Let me
want to.
get some of
Yeah, exactly,
that.
exactly. How you want to play, but then the reality of what you can actually be able to kind of get to come to said school. And a lot of us mid-majors kind of face that. Even again, Brooklyn Meyer, what is she, 6'1" on a good day?
Yeah.
So you could say obviously that they've been phenomenal in his success there, but if she's 6'3", does she still end up there? So it's part of that in terms of how you want to play, and it does adjust a little bit because you have to figure out what you can get, and then you got to make something shake.
Do you see a basketball culture in Denver where there is that like because I think we think about like New York and LA, right, as like the hubs for basketball talent, but is there that in Denver where you're able to just go and be like, hey, you can come play in your backyard and come play for a school like this?
That's been the focus of us of ours in recruiting these last couple of years. We have two, I'd say two and a half, because Joe actually spent some time here in Denver in high school before she went back to Wyoming, so she's the half that we count. But our other two with Brooke and Corinne, both just Brooke transferred from Hawaii, but a local kid
Yeah.
um, from Aurora, and then the one kid that we signed early is from Highlands Ranch. So we've tried to build that out where people feel like it's enticing to stay home. Where there's a lot of schools here in Colorado, but in Denver, we're the only Division I school, and obviously with our academic piece, so we try to offer that. But I think what we found is, people can always come back home. So staying here initially isn't, the highest priority on their list. And for myself to spend 19 years as an assistant in a place like New Orleans, where you could drive 5 hours, be in Memphis, be in Birmingham, be in Houston, the accessibility is so different. When you drive 5 hours here, you're, in middle of Kansas, nowhere. You're not
Yeah.
even barely to Kansas.
Yeah.
So the pull is definitely much different. Colorado has a lot of talent, but I think we're continuing trying to get our name out there to make it enticing for people to stay home, and really proud of the local kids that we will have three on our roster. And even when the portal opens, that's something if kids are looking to come back home and to try to continue to build our brand. So they're excited to stay home for their home team. And it definitely has its challenges, but I feel like Colorado, sometimes you look elsewhere when all you got to do is just look across the street and we pretty much have what you're looking for. And so our staff will continue to work to kind of get that message out to the local. But proud of the three and a half now, because Tori will be here next year, so we'll have three and a half with Joe being half.
Coach, you talk about all these, all these things that go into being a head coach and how long you've been there, things like that. I wanted to ask you, how special is it that you get to do it alongside someone you care for so deeply? It's not often that you get to coach with your significant other. And I think you have that, you share that unique privilege. Can you speak a little bit to that, just about you know, how special that is to you and how much it means to you to do that?
Yeah, man, you with these heavy hitters, my guy. It is, honestly, we talk about this all the time. This is year 24 for me overall, and year 22 for her overall. She was a personal trainer for a couple years when we first started dating. And, it's so fun to be able to do it together. I think we've kept each other in it probably, this year going into the season in this particular role is trying to figure out how to have some boundaries around it. But it's so rewarding to have somebody that like is not only going through it with you, but have the same passion that you have. To the same, her mind is very different than mine. The best way I can explain it is she is like the numbers, all of that. I'm more like, let me write you a poem about it. Let me write you a poem. So we balance each other out that way, and I really enjoy have an opportunity to do this with her. I think the perspective that she brings, it is one that makes me think differently than what I want to sometimes. And it's not always chocolate and roses, as I tell people. We get on each other's nerves. But I think it's like sometimes one of those um, what's understood doesn't have to be said some moments too. So it's nice to have that balance where she can also be a buffer with the staff too, of like try to intercept some things before like, yeah, I might want to pump the brakes on this because like now it's not a good time. But I feel so fortunate that Denver has embraced us, and not just, us. as a couple, but really as basketball coaches. And I think it's not one of those deals where, oh, I'm just gonna, hire my spouse. Like she's done it for a really long time, a lot of different levels, a lot of different roles from she's had more. I've only been an assistant for 19 years before I got this role. She's been a graduate assistant. She's been an op. She's been a head coach actually at the JUCO level. So all that experience to be able to have that and to talk about it, I feel like it's made it a lot more enjoyable even through the highs and lows that the season can provide. And it's nice having somebody that understands.
Last word.
Yeah, is
Oh,
it,
go ahead, Dylan.
the occasion? I was gonna say it's worth the occasional silent car ride home.
Yeah, right now we're down to one card because we let my best friend use her card. It's always her card. Nobody's using my card, but you can use hers. And so now it makes it a bit awkward because usually we'll like have a day where we'll drive separate. And so, but we also last season, I have a little like infrared sauna in the basement and it's like my Zen room. So I usually go down there for some alone time, but it'll get to the point where she'll be like, you need to go downstairs. No, I don't. Do you need but yeah, we've gotten much better to be able to balance that out, but it's so fun to be able to to work alongside her.
Last one for me, Coach. You're at a place that has national championship pedigree. I mean, we saw it with men's hockey last year, soccer going all the way to the College Cup this year. I mean, the swim and dive program has won like 11 straight Summit League titles. Do you ever get a chance to pop into some of those coaches' offices and just kind of powwow and pick their brain about, how they've been able to go on and build programs that have had so much success at the national level?
Yeah, where my office sits, I'm actually sandwiched in between hockey hockey and women's basketball share a suite. So it's you
Okay.
come in the suite, you go to the left is their staff, you come to the right, it's our staff. So there's something that we get to see every day, just how those guys move and carry themselves. Will occasionally pop my head in, but then on the other side of my wall is men's soccer and the success that they've had. So then also in the same wing is men's lacrosse. So it feels like there's a lot of success everywhere you turn, and I'm the type that I'm definitely a sponge. I feel like basketball here at the University of Denver is such a unique situation compared to some of the other sports. Unique in a sense of the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs of just whoever's been in this seat. But I definitely do like picking their brains, those that have been here for a while and like what has worked for them. But I as quickly as I feel like I got the position here as quickly as the rules have changed NCAA wise. So I think what gets difficult about us trying to pick each other's brains, basketball and the portal and NIL is very different than the soccer and the portal and NIL or lacrosse, something like that. But in terms of how they carry themselves and run their programs, I'm a sponge for sure. Somebody like Jamie, he's always either trying to in men's soccer bring a Brooke down or share this. And so I will be a sponge to be able to see a lot of these programs have success. It's something that we'll continue to kind of shoot for and strive for. And I do appreciate people's patience because it's different. It's been a different kind of grind and struggle for us in terms of like the success, but there's a lot of success here in a lot of different areas that if we can kind of pull some from each of those and make it our own, that's what I'll continue to do.
Um, that's it. I guess I've always wanted to ask what like for me, so like I always remember I have a vivid memory of the first game I ever did at Midco because I'd never met you. And I'm thinking like, oh, this like I don't know what any coach is like, whatever. But then you kind of just were instantly like, what's going on, man? I'm like, oh hey coach. What makes it like, how do you kind of keep that? I don't know, something about your energy on the sidelines, the way you approach everything, the way you approach basketball, obviously we follow each other on socials. And you're very, very active. You don't hide how you feel. Kind of how does that help you, in the day-to-day grind of being, just being a head coach? Because it's something that I personally I admire that about you because I was all like, I don't know if she's gonna even like, is she gonna like me? Is she gonna even answer my questions? And you were giving great answers, and I'm like, oh, I don't even got to work hard for this.
I think I'm a big energy person, and being in this role, I realize the platform is so different. You can hide in so many different ways as an assistant. But now I'm being a head coach, people are constantly looking to you. How are you going to present yourself? I'm really big on, and probably, my mom passed in 2013, but this is how I was raised. If you're up, you're up. Meaning like as soon as you came out of your room, if you ready to interact with anybody in the house, be ready to interact. If you got something, go lay back down. And that's kind of how, and so my energy when I leave, when I leave the house, like I'm mindful of it. And I don't ever want, basketball is a game. I say this often that it's done so much for me. It's provided a life I never even anticipated. And I was getting my bag earlier because this is my bench bag for this year, which is just,
Bless it.
yeah, blessed is what I always say. My favorite scripture,
Yes.
Isaiah 40:31. From Topeka, but I like to East Topeka. And then my mom's name was Dorletta, so Dorletta's kids. But it's really just a reminder. I've had such a hard life coming up that, there's no way you're going to sit here and tell me that because I've won 8 games this season in basketball that I'm a failure. I know every day that like the opportunity that I get, that joy that I get from being on the sideline, that I get to do this again. It's really how I live my life. Like I genuinely love it. I'm very passionate about it. Does it frustrate me? Absolutely. But I keep this as a reminder to myself of like how much I've been through. And so it's hard to really sit there like, I don't remember where we were. And I was literally telling myself, look at you. Like you get to coach this game. Like you get to coach this game. You get to stand up here and be the head coach. And win, lose, or draw. One of my mentors said to me, if people knew your life story, they wouldn't call you anything less than a champion. And that's pretty much how I live. So I think this is easy for me. I've been through harder things. Losing is hard, but I mean, it's a game, guys. It's a game, and I want it to work out, and if it does, great. And if it doesn't, I'm more than my record, and it will always be bigger than basketball. And that's not something I'm just telling you. That's how I live. And for you to follow me on social media, I'm sure you feel that too. Is just I will find something to smile about because I know what the other side looks like and what hard really looks like. And this may feel hard, but I've been through harder.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about sports and really just life in general is that you get up another day and go see what you can do, try to make it happen, and we appreciate that perspective. But I mean, we see it on Twitter, right? You post every morning, right? And so
Yeah.
oftentimes it's like the sunrise over the mountains or something, and like I think that's it's like nice to ground
Symbolic.
yourself like that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I think in sports, and especially, basketball, where the season can be so long, and if you're not having the success on game days, as I told the team, if we're fortunate, right, to go 41-0 like South Carolina did, that's 41 times where you feel like, okay, I had some success. Well, there's 365 days in a year. Were you not successful those other days? You're waiting for those, one day to decide if all that work was successful or not. And obviously you want, again, I'm not dumb. I realize what we do this line of work, you got to win games and things like that. But I'm not, it's probably more for me to make sure that I don't get so caught up in the wins and the losses. And when you do that, you lose sight of what the bigger picture is. But it's also a way for me to kind of keep things in perspective. And, some of us are at places for different reasons and stops for different reasons. And trust me, I want to win as much as the next person. And nobody trained, like I told the team, nobody got up this morning and said, you know what? I can't wait to lose on Saturday. Like who trains for that? Like nobody's growing up like I can't wait. Like no, that's not the mindset. I'm gonna do my best, and I'm gonna see what's gonna happen, and I'm gonna try to obviously go out there and win the game. But no one trains for second place. No one trains to come this close. Like no one's training for that. So mindset's everything, but it's something that I have to work hard at. I'm gonna be honest. I work hard at it, but I know it's important for me to be able to live my life this way.
Well, Coach, we appreciate you, and like I said, we appreciate that mindset because it's a little lost on some folks these days. But thank you. We want to thank you, of course, for coming on. Even though you say you're looking rough, I disagree. I think you look great. Anything looks better than this. So
No,
we
I mean
appreciate you
my
coming on today.
hair is barely twisted, but it
Hey, it's
You're
all good.
good.
I need a haircut. I need a haircut. We all got some stuff.
Well, I
Say
appreciate you guys having me on. I saw you guys started this podcast, and I think it was you, Darren, that I messaged. I was like low key hoping that you guys would invite me on someday. So I really do appreciate it, and I hope you guys also feel, regardless, where we are now or when we turn it around. I'm always literally a phone call away to be accessible. I got when that. I won't say who or where, but somebody in conference was essentially saying on the women's side, one of the commentators calls the game, and everybody, our practices are always open, shoot around practices. But we were the only team that allowed them to come in and kind of do their research for the game, or the only coach that would actually talk to them. And so I think it's important that we continue to promote the league, promote our product, regardless of what it is. So I do appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to do so.
of course,
Yeah,
because we'll be watching. We'll be watching.
always. We
Yeah,
can't
well,
get enough. Coach, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much and good luck this weekend.
all right. Thank you. Go Pios.
Doja, baby, legend.
Awesome. Yeah, I love talking to coaches because they all have like this perspective. I mean, you don't get to that point to be a Division I basketball coach or really coach of any sport if you don't have that type of perspective where you can almost step away. Like I guess from the outside, you would think these people who go in and their profession is to win, like that would be everything. I mean, the reality is like there's so much more to it. So it's good to hear from a coach. I mean, we've talked to a lot of these coaches. We've had a ton of success this year. Um, she unfortunately is not, and I mean, like she said, 8 wins so far, but still have that perspective going in every single day, and being ready to let's get to work. And
Yeah,
it's February; anything can happen.
yeah. Well, I mean, even when you talked, I mean, we talked to Matt Driscoll earlier on, and I mean, it's not like North Florida. I mean, for as much success as they had early this season, I mean,
Yeah,
they still been kind of limping around in their conference. And he was even the first to admit, he said, "Look, you know, it wasn't always easy at North Florida. Like, they've had some rough patches, but." That's what comes with being a coach. And I think there's something to be said for, especially a coach that you can tell is all the way in it,
yeah,
unlike Doug Gottlieb. Like, you can just tell, like, when you talk with Doja, that she's very passionate about this. And
yeah,
it's not just about the wins and the losses. It's also about, creating better people, encouraging, the players to be good people on and off the court, to be positive, to find those small wins. Like, it's easy to measure success by the win and loss column. And I know it sounds cliche, but like at the same time, it's so much deeper than that because even Duke has bad seasons. Kansas has bad seasons. Villanova's had a few bad seasons after they won back-to-back national championships,
yeah,
and then they've had some bad seasons. UConn, they just went back-to-back championships, and they haven't necessarily started this season off maybe the way that people would expect, given that they just won two championships. So it's so much deeper than just wins and losses. And like you said, it's always great to get that kind of that view um in a public eye.
yeah, yeah. To get that type of perspective, you mentioned Doug Gottlieb. I want to mention a coach on the women's side who has had a ton of success and has won. And it's actually the team that Denver plays on Saturday at 11 a.m., which is a brutal time for tip-off, but they're having a doubleheader against St. Thomas, both the women's and men's teams. And it's Ruth Sin, who just got her 400th career win, was that a
Yes.
couple weeks ago? I mean,
Yes,
she
yes.
is like one of the legends, and you brought it up a couple of years ago. St. Thomas, um, women's basketball, I guess Ruth Sin, since she's been at St. Thomas when they were Division III and then transitioning to D1, her record in March is unbelievable. I mean, she's lost like 10 times in March in I don't even know how many years. Like, yeah, So I just
Yeah,
want to
and that includes,
give some
the
flowers to her.
yeah, that includes the transition to D1. Also, she was another one of the coaches who, when I first started at Midco, wasn't really too familiar with her and, hadn't really known.
Yeah,
But I remember I had already been there for a year and we'd only interacted, I think, a handful of times. I think the first time was at the Summit League tournament. And I just kind of approached her at halftime because I didn't get to get talk to her before the game. But at halftime, she was really cool, wasn't trying to rush me because it was halftime, had a very quick, I asked her two or three questions. She was very responsive, gave some detailed answers, like, and I appreciate that. But then the following year, I got to call my first game, my first play-by-play for, Division 1 basketball.
yeah,
And it happened to be a game that she was doing. So I gave her a phone call leading up to it because I wasn't sure, what her schedule was like. But she was like, we can do a phone call. And she was telling me, oh, I remember, Darren, I remember you from last year. You do a great job, blah, blah. I'm like, wow, like I don't know what I'm doing, but I guess I
yeah,
must be doing something right if she's a member. But that's really something, it just goes to show you that, no matter how successful or unsuccessful you may be, it doesn't cost much to be a good person. And I appreciate Ruth for just being, she's an upstanding person, she's a great basketball coach, but also an even better person. And I think she deserves the success that she's had. And just being a part of that St. Thomas transition, you see what Johnny T is doing with the men
yeah.
and you look at what she's doing with the women. I mean, I don't think they've been lower than a 5 seed
No,
since they've come to Division 1. So
and
it just
they've
goes to show
won
you.
games in the Summit League tournament in Sioux
Mhm.
Falls, which is the kind of the toughest setting to do because you're always playing a team that is from a Dakota or right down the street in Omaha. So
Yeah, you
uh,
get that blue and yellow sea on a Monday afternoon,
a
and you're
Monday at
like,
noon, and there's 12,000 people in the arena, 10,000, whatever it may be. Yeah, I mean, what was it last year? The fourth highest attended
yes, the fourth
basketball
highest
tournament
attended.
in the country. All right, it beat out the Pac-12 and Big 12, like a bunch of these other huge tournaments that you would think would have a lot of people. But it just kind of shows what it means. Speaking of the Gold and Blue, they've won 56 straight Summit League games.
Hey man,
56.
it's tough. AJ, he's got a vice grip on the recruiting edge. He's got a vice grip on it just feels like and we've been saying this last year that with the recruiting class they have coming in, with the
Yeah.
talent that they have, and considering the injury, I mean, they were still winning games last year. And then I mean, it was no secret that once they got, some girls back, Callie Thiessen and
Caitlin
Haley
Timmer.
Timmer,
Yeah.
you get those two back. So that takes a lot of weight off the shoulders of, Brooklyn and Paige Meyer, and you consider adding in, a Katie Vasika and Emma Fox, who were the two true freshmen who were getting playing time this year, but also in their class, Claire Shepard, Jaden Dunn, and Molly Abdouche, like they're set. I'm really, it's not you wonder how long it's gonna take because I remember when UConn was going on those, unbeaten streaks, of upwards of
Yeah.
100 games almost. I'm really
146 was the record. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious how, I mean, for one, I'm curious how long it can go. But for two, I'm curious when it'll get some national notoriety because I think, in terms of women's basketball, you think about, on the men's side, you've got Gonzaga and Memphis are like the two most, iconic mid-major schools.
Yeah.
Gonzaga in particularly because, they've been talking about possibly moving to the Big 12 and things
Former
like that.
former Butler, some of those teams that have made that jump to the Big East and
Yeah,
things like
right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just makes you wonder, like, when is South Dakota State, now that with the growing popularity of women's basketball, will people start to look at South Dakota State with the same reverence and respect that they looked at, Gonzaga when they were starting to, become that team? And they really have deserved it for, I think, much longer than they're getting.
Yeah.
Because even now, I mean, they just got ranked number 25 in the coaches poll, and obviously you and I have been begging the AP voters and whoever will listen to just rank them in the AP poll too, because yeah, are they in the Summit League, which could be considered a weird conference? Sure, but they're dominating. They rarely lose, and they've beaten ranked teams this year. They've beaten
Yeah.
teams who were ranked at the time,
Correct.
and they could have beaten. a currently ranked Duke team. I mean, they played them at home. They lost by what,
And that
seven?
Duke team looks so good right now. I mean, they're number 10 in the country for the reason, right?
Yeah,
You don't
and
accidentally get up to number 10 in the AP poll.
yeah, and I know you don't get points. I mean, you get some, I think, but you don't necessarily get, the ultimate respect for playing them close. But it
Correct.
was really a game that could have gone either way. It was
Right.
just there was a bit of a, that scoreless drought in the fourth quarter that really, I think, ended up being the Jacks' undoing. But
Yeah.
I think they're very deserving of being a top 25 ranked team and should be looked at as in the same way that we look at, Gonzaga, Memphis, you mentioned Butler,
Yeah.
on the men's side.
I think this year's team is the best that we've seen since we started following the summit. So this is year 3 for us. I mean, 2 years ago they had a really good team. They went to the second round and ended up losing to a Virginia Tech team in Blacksburg that went to the Final Four after beating USC. So they have had these teams, and it's
It's
consistent over the
tough.
years.
I
It's
don't know.
tough,
It's kind of tough because I
but it's
mean, just
all
looking
about
at that team.
it's all about seeding and where you get in March. And like right now, even right now, just checking the net rankings before we started recording today, they're checking in at like number 42 in the net, which is still on the bubble if they don't win the Summit League, right? You got to be in the top 40 to be pretty confident that you're getting into the dance. And even if they did get into the dance as an at-large, say they lose to Oral Roberts, who's probably the team that could threaten them the most in Sioux Falls, but you're probably slipping down to like a 10 or 11 seed. And then all of a sudden you got to go and play a team like, I don't know, Utah, like they did last year. Like those are the challenges. But as it stands right now, top 25 in the coaches poll, I think 30th in the AP right now, getting votes still. I don't think they're going to sneak inside the top 25 in the AP. I don't think it really matters. I think the net is probably going to hover around that 40, high 30s spot
Mhm.
because, again, this is all contingent on them winning out. Like you have to win. They have to keep winning games. That's the toughest part for them because as soon as you lose, all of a
Oh,
sudden,
it changes everything. Now you
yeah,
go from, you were sitting at, in that 38 to 45 range. Now you
yeah.
lose a game, and then all of a sudden you could drop to, let's just say, I don't know, 70, 80 something,
And the
off one
Summit
game.
League, in the net rankings is one of the worst in the country this year in women's hoops, right? They have that team in the 40s, and then I believe it's like North Dakota State and Oral Roberts that are in the low 100s. There's three teams in the top 200 of the net of the 346 college basketball teams. Like that's a problem. So, as a league, they need to elevate, but there's some processes that are,
It, it 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 all comes with time. I think, South Dakota State was a little ahead of the curve and is benefiting from that. Not to say that they aren't, you know, they haven't earned it or like
oh
anything
no,
like
for
that.
sure.
It would never insinuate that. But, I think that we're in a place, especially now, where girls and women, I mean, yesterday was National Women and Girls in Sports Day. Like it's becoming more commonplace that girls, instead of being brought up to, be more, I guess, traditionally feminine or whatever you want to call it. I don't want to, the cancel creatures don't come calling for me. But instead of, maybe doing more quote unquote girly things, now they're playing. I mean, and I don't really call it girly, I just call it sports. Now they're growing up, they're playing basketball, they're playing soccer, they're swimming, they're playing lacrosse. Like they're being pushed into those things as opposed to just being, oh, like you're a girl, well, you can only do these things, or it's becoming more commonplace. So I can only imagine not even just what the Summit League could look like in a few years, but what women's basketball as a whole could look like in the next, 5 to, 7 or so
Yeah.
years.
Well, and I think that's the best part about this kind of reckoning that's happened over the past few years. And, everyone kind of points to Caitlin Clark. I think it's been generations of building to this. I mean, going all the way back to Candace Parker and players like Lisa Leslie and Cheryl Swoops. Like any of these big name players and coaches over the years that have done what they've done, what Don Staley has done, what Pat Summitt did at Tennessee for years, what Gino Auriemma has been able to build with his teams. I think that has led to this point. It's just taken time because they started further behind because of the cultural norms that were in place at the time. And I think it's great because now all of a sudden we're seeing this talent. We're seeing the unbelievable crowds that are pulling out, to go to games. And as proof that it's not just a Caitlin Clark effect, Iowa still sells out all their games because people want to go and
Care.
watch hoops.
Hmm.
They're fans, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest thing. Like what Gottlieb that we like, Lindsay Gottlieb, is built at USC, right? I mean, she said when she first got the job, administration told her that they will never sell out a women's basketball game because they couldn't even sell out men's basketball games. And now they're putting 10,000 in the seats on a Tuesday night. So it's awesome to see. We are huge fans, obviously. I think it's just fun. I think
Yeah.
it's
I mean, we like every sport.
it's
Every
more
sport,
it's more basketball. Free
Yeah.
basketball. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. There's more hoops, more
Nothing
things to
better.
watch.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, you came at me earlier with some footage. Have we possibly been
Well,
proven incorrect?
no. Okay. So this footage was sent to me by a pretty notable rapper in the game, E40. He's a listener, and he sent me this earlier this week, and he said, I think this might be some proof. And so I did some digging into it. It's from ABC 27, which is in Harrisburg. Shout out ABC 27, Joe Trentley, our guy.
Yeah.
But they wanted to celebrate 58 years since Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points, which was in 2020. So on that anniversary, there's a clip on their website. It's 12 seconds long. Okay. And
Oh
there's
yeah.
3 video clips in that cut up that they used. And it was just their sports anchor talking about 100 years ago in Hershey, Pennsylvania, in front of 4,000 people, Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points. That was it. But these clips, looking at it, Wilt Chamberlain is in 2 different jerseys. He's in a dark jersey and a light jersey. It's not from the same game.
It's
Okay?
not from the same
I
game.
can't tell what team they're playing when he's wearing the dark jersey, but the team that they're playing when he's wearing the light jersey is the Boston Celtics, which is not the team that he allegedly scored 100 points against. So that's not footage from that game. That's footage from a different game when they're playing the Celtics.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I thought we were in danger for a second, but I guess,
the bit lives on.
yeah, the bit lives, and we're still left wondering why did nobody pull out a camera at Hershey Park? Tisk tisk.
Sad. Well, Doug Gottlieb, leave Radio Row. Go back to your team. You're on a 19-game losing streak. You got to play the second place team in the Horizon League in Purdue Fort Wayne on Saturday. I need you to get back there, bud. Okay, you can't watch practice on Zoom like they said he was going to do. That is insane. Go to practice, focus on your team. Radio Row at the Super Bowl can wait. Or actually, don't even do it.
Shouldn't even matter. You're
Send
the
someone
head
else.
coach of a Division I basketball program.
Send us to
Yeah, send
Radio
some-
Row. We'll do your show. You can focus on your team. This is for the players,
Yeah.
Doug.
I'll take back half the things I ever said about you, Doug, if you would have sent me, but I guess you want me to keep going. And it's one thing, if like you can get away with stuff when you're good. You can't do this. You can't, you're a
What
two-win
good coach? What coach of a team that's above 500? Let's just put that
misses
as a benchmark.
practice.
Misses practice to leave Wisconsin, which is way up here, and go all the way down to New Orleans to the Super Bowl to go do some interviews with, I don't know, insert player walking around.
Which has nothing to do, like it's not going to enrich his coaching. It's not going to make them win a game. I'm baffled and disappointed. And yeah,
Darren, I had a coach in college, and we may have been really bad in football in my college career. That's fine. I think we all had a blast looking back at it. We made some great friendships and relationships along the way, which is great because that's ultimately what matters at the end of the day. But this coach, his daughter wanted to get married on a Saturday during college football season. She picked out a specific weekend, and it was the weekend where we were playing Franklin and Marshall College in the fifth oldest rivalry in all of college football in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Okay, speaking of things that happen in Pennsylvania, yes, there's video of this. We went down there and we won to win the Wagon Trophy. Again, a ton of history, rich rivalry, all that. He told us after the game, he was like, my daughter's getting married tomorrow. We didn't know. He said she wanted to get married on a Saturday. I said no, do it on Sunday because we got to play Saturday. We got to go win a game on Saturday. Okay. All right. And even on that Sunday, like I think he was still kind of upset that he had to miss film because there was a lot to learn from that game. We won 13-7. Okay. There was a lot to learn from that game. But he had to miss film because he had to go watch his daughter get married. But that's acceptable. But if you're going to Super Bowl Radio Row and you are 2-22 as a team and you've lost 19 straight going all the way back to mid-November before the yams were on the table, before Thanksgiving, including a loss to a Division II school that you called nobody you better get your ass back to Wisconsin and lock in because that's
Definitely, the loss that they most recently suffered, I think, was to Detroit Mercy. That was definitely good for anybody who got in on the
yeah.
$10 since they've won a game thing. Because I think the odds on that, or no, it wasn't Detroit Mercy. It was, hold on.
There was
Yeah,
one.
It
It
was
was
Detroit
Detroit
Mercy.
Mercy, yeah.
Yeah, it was Detroit Mercy. And the money line on that game was actually not it was minus 165 for Detroit Mercy, which isn't bad if you're putting what was it like six or $7,000 on it. So you
Yeah.
put $7,000 on that. So if you've just been fading Green Bay for these past 19 games, you're up over 10K.
Yeah.
Like officially.
Which we did not do because we
Yeah,
probably
I mean, can't say I saw a 19 game losing streak coming, but that's on me.
hindsight. Honestly, we probably should have. A guy that has a podcast and a radio show also trying to coach college basketball. Meanwhile, in that
What could go
podcast and
wrong?
radio show, he's talking NFL and things like that. Yeah, I
What
think we
could
should
go
have saw that
wrong, they
coming.
say.
Unfortunate. Well, they play Purdue, Fort Wayne in Fort Wayne on Saturday. So,
You mean they'll lose to Purdue Fort Wayne on Saturday
I,
because their coach missed practice on Thursday?
look, we talked about right Doshia Woods and what she's been able to do at the University of Denver as head coach, and how she wakes up every morning and she posts a picture of the mountain skyline of Denver and says grateful because it's another day. And she goes into the office and she locks in and she tries to find a way to get her team better, right? To add some 1,000-point scorers to their roster, to do what they got to do. Doug Gottlieb is doing the opposite. Doug Gottlieb isn't even trying.
Yeah. We no.
We
No, say
wanted to
no
lay
to
off, but we can't.
yeah. Say no to Doug Gottlieb. But the last thing that I have is saying yes to Big West basketball
Yes.
because there's actually a couple of sick games. Tonight we got UC Riverside against UC San Diego. And then on Saturday, we got the big one, UC Irvine against UC San Diego. So I know our boy Ryan Hammer was
Yeah.
saying everyone's talking about the Super Bowl, but this is my Super Bowl. And he specifically referenced this Saturday night's game. Like my schedule on Saturday will be Lakers Mavericks, Luka Doncic debut at
Yeah. Of
4:30,
course.
Knicks Celtics rivalry at 8 o'clock or 8:30. And then huh? And then we're going right to ESPNU for UC San Diego, UC Irvine.
Yeah. That'll be the show. Is that in San Diego?
It is no, it'll be at Irvine.
Wow. Wow. They're going to the anteater pit? Zot, zot, zot.
Da, 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 baby.
It's been too long since Big West basketball had a reckoning like this, had a moment where they're getting on the national stage. They don't get a ton of nationally televised games, and when they do, they're coming on at like midnight Eastern time. So it's good to see this. It's good to see the Big West actually start to have some success. Fullerton and Long Beach, the two teams that for so long were kind of the teams, and Santa Barbara as well, are not the teams anymore. It's now UC San Diego, who's in their first year of being eligible for the NCAA tournament, and UC Irvine. So it's good to see that. I'm still kind of working on trying to get one of those two coaches on the show because those would be a good conversation.
I just want to shout out personally UC Santa Barbara for being a part of the start of one of my hottest gambling streaks that I ever went on. I bet a lot of money irresponsibly on
Do you usually bet it
Ohio.
responsibly?
No,
Okay.
I bet a lot of money irresponsibly on Ohio to win their conference championship game that season, and they did. They had Jason, what's his name? Jason Preston. And so they won that game and I won my parlay. So I had like $750. Then
Whew.
I bet $500 on UC Santa Barbara to win their conference chip. And my rationale was my friend who at school at the time, he said his dad has a friend that went there and said this is their year. So I said, okay, and I bet $500 on it. And then it kicked off a streak of betting on Syracuse ML irresponsibly two times because I knew we were going to lose to Houston. I only
Yeah.
did it twice, and I won both those games, and we were dogs in both those games. So that was cool. That was fun. So shout out Santa Barbara. I don't know what their mascot is, but I called them
Gauchos.
the Gauchos. Okay, I was gonna
Gauchos.
say I called them the mariachis because their hat looked like, or the sombreros because their hat looks, that's their what the logo looks like. But shout out to them, the Big West. We talk a lot about East Coast bias on this show, so I had to give a little bit of love to the Big West since we no longer have the Pac-12. Rest in peace.
Good.
Well, we'll have it back next year, but it won't be the same.
It's not
That's
going
it
to be the same.
won't be the same.
No. St. Mary's, their annual tradition of beating Gonzaga and Moraga. Um, that happened.
That happened.
They still
They
have to
almost folded.
go. They still have to go to Gonzaga. So that'll happen, and they will lose, and then Gonzaga will end up winning the
Well,
WCC. And look, these are traditions, man. It's the same thing
I don't know.
over and over. San Francisco will play Gonzaga tough in San Francisco. It's now it's not the
I
same Gonzaga team, but
if there's a year that it could happen, I
I
don't
think
see
we've
why
been
it
saying
can't.
that for like the last 3 years, though.
Yeah, but this year feels different.
All right, folks. Remember, not gambling advice, but go place a wager on Purdue Fort Wayne for Saturday because Doug
Yeah.
Gottlieb is in New Orleans.
Yeah, if you have 10K, might be the time for that.
All right, that'll be it. We'll see you next week
Good night, Irene.
for more college basketball. Goodbye.